JM, my man Kemba, good to see y'all. Thank you for spending some time with us on Hip Hop Could Save America. How y'all doing?
Yo, life is
Doing
good,
well.
man. Good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no doubt. It's my pleasure. I've given the live stream folks a little bit of heads up about the film, what we're here to talk about. But if you could, Jay, maybe just from your point of view, the log line, as they say in Hollywood,
Sure.
of what this film is about, if you could just sum it up so that people will get it from your perspective.
Totally. Well, it's a story about the work of artists being used against them in courtrooms across America. Specifically, it's about the history of how rap lyrics have been used and are now being used against artists in courtrooms. And it's a story that starts here, but then goes back 300-400 years and shows how we got here in the first place.
Yeah, it's obviously so not obviously yeah, but obviously people know me. I've been kind of looking at this issue. Issue isn't new, particularly as you say, it goes back to hundreds of years as you explore in the film. But particularly recently, right here in Atlanta, obviously it's been kind of on the forefront of people's minds with young thug trials and other instances where rap lyrics are now being used as evidence. So it's a little bit less inside baseball now. It's a little bit more out in the mainstream. Right. So the timing of this was really important, I guess. Interestingly enough. So how did the film, how did the project come to life? How did y'all two hook up? Kemba, I'm gonna get to you because I know everything about you. But how did y'all two link up? Like chicken or the egg? What came? Like the project came first, then you met Kemba. Did Kemba come to you? How did y'all link up and get this kind of project come to life?
No, I knew Kimba. I had met him maybe like a year, maybe even a little more than a year before I was given this book called Rap Lyrics on Trial. And so I read the book. The foreword was written by Killer Mike. And it was just exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that book is responsible basically for the journey that we then took. And I, in figuring out what the film would be, I knew that I didn't want it to be like an academic study of the issue like the book was. Right. I knew it needed to be something different to reach the culture, to reach people in a more engaging way for what we were trying to do. And so I immediately thought of Kemba. From the very beginning, I knew I wanted to have him involved if he was willing to sort of go on the journey. And then having him at the center of it gave us a point of view, which is from the artist's point of view, because we had all heard a lot, as you were saying, especially the young thug in the news, you're always hearing from a prosecutor or a DA or from his attorneys or
some
from
legal
the
analysts.
pundits. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. From everybody but the artists. And they are as silent as you have ever seen them when they're sitting in the defendant's seat. They're made to be quiet. And so it was a really almost obvious avenue for us. If there's a story that hadn't yet been told and it was about the person who is not saying anything, that's the artist. So that's where Kimba came in, being obviously a phenomenal artist himself. It gave the whole film a point of view, and that's how it started.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I described this as a documentary / dramatization. You know what I mean? And so it's like it was a unique way of doing it because it could be straight documentary, and it's we see and documentaries are great. I love documentaries,
right?
But the fact that it was dramatized, I guess Kemba, bro, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
There you go, man.
It's I guess the question is how much of the dramatization did you come up with? It seems like, as I know from the opening scenes, a lot of you was in this film, so the dramatization part seemed real personal at times, just from family photos, and then how you obviously I know you as an artist for a long time, and that some of these issues are core to your heart. They're in your lyrics. You've never shied away from these topics, and so how did you feel getting into this project, and what was your kind of, I guess, starting perspective as it took shape?
When Jason told me about it, it was probably like the quickest yes in the world. Like I knew I knew this was for me. Like you said, this is sort of like a culmination of all the things that I've always sort of been passionate about. And my involvement, it really was. I was fortunate enough. Jason allowed it to be sort of like a think tank sort of environment, where I was really just passionate about getting it right and representing sort of artists the right way. And Jason had a vision already, and so we were able to sort of bounce off ideas, and it was a really cool environment that way, from the sort of scenes to to the voiceover stuff. It was a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it seemed to be. The traveling aspect, the kind of going around the world. I think what I like about this is that, first of all, people don't know that this is an issue to begin with. The people that do know that this is an issue to begin with think of it as a domestic American thing.
Yeah.
I actually, the first time that I really got in depth about it, and I wish I knew her name, I'd have to go digging. I sat on a plane going to a conference once, and it just so happens that I'm talking to someone, I'm sitting next to someone that's going to the conference, and they were from Canada. And they were presenting on this very same, this was like 10 years ago. So this very same issue, but from a Canadian point of view. And that's when I started learning that, oh, there was a heavy metal artist that was charged with this crime, and the lyrics, you know, kind of in some of his songs, but it wasn't used against him, you know, and I started realizing this disparity exists. So where did the idea of going from city to city come about? And then was the international aspect something that you initially thought you'd do or discovered along the way?
Well, as somebody who has lived both in New York and Atlanta, like yourself, I mean, you know, the texture of the music is so different from region to region.
Yeah.
And so we knew that we wanted to go to East Coast, West Coast, and the South, and Chicago, like Midwest,
Sure.
period. And then as soon as you land in Chicago, really the journey of drill music became the journey of the film. And then that took us to the UK, because after it had been basically stifled in Chicago by CPD and really in the surrounding Midwest region, it became nearly impossible for the major drill artists to just throw a show there. And so they all moved out of Chicago. And in the same way, the film then goes to London, where that drill sound was then picked up and changed before it was then shuttled back to the Bronx and Brooklyn. So that whole journey of what the music did, going underground, popping back up in the UK, and then making its way back. And around 2020, in the Bronx and Brooklyn, we just followed that story, and that brought us full circle back to Kemba's home. So that's how we did it. Yeah.
Yep. Up at the Bronx where the people are fresh. One of the there's two like ideas that are explored in this, and I think we touched upon them briefly, but let's dive in a little bit. The legalities of this, right? The disparity, whether lyrics can and should be used in a court of law as evidence. What's the line between art and, you know, and in this case, evidence or you know, something that would be held against you, right? That could be used against you. And the complications with that, especially with rap music, especially with multicultural kind of stuff, because very often as you've explored, the meanings behind some of the lyrics are just foreign to folks outside of the culture. So we have this legal thing, like, should art be even used in that way? They don't go after film directors. They don't go after actors, right? In the same way that they're going after artists. And then the second one is artistically, like, it's almost like what you say, you know, as we speak, should we speak? Can we continue being artists if this is something that insidiously could be used against us? So from those two perspectives, what are the sort of major takeaways or bullet points that you wanted to get across in the film? Maybe Jay from the legal standpoint and Kemba from an artist.
So a couple of things. One, yeah, you're right. It's not just we as a Western culture are obsessed with violence. Everybody knows that. You just turn on the TV and you're served this full menu of violence. It's like, what do you like? You see people get killed, like anything you could possibly want, and we
on a scale of 1 to John Wick.
On a scale, exactly,
right,
exactly. But the people that we celebrate, the celebrities and the Hollywood culture are the people who you could say have done the most to make sure that violence is at the very core of the way that we entertain ourselves. But you then rewind that back, you see it's not just like an American story; it's just a human story. Back to the days of from the days of gladiators to all the way up to the days of Shakespeare, we've always found ways.
Entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Right.
Perfect. Russell Crowe said it himself. So it's
immortalized in Hollywood.
Right, exactly.
Wink, wink.
But you notice it's the first time anybody's ever brought up that phrase. But you notice what happens to the crowd when he says that. Are you not entertained? And everybody goes dead silence, like they've never been asked that question. And then so they're thinking about it for a second. It's like, this is kind of, I don't know if we can swear on the show, but it's kind of like, it's kind of effed up that
Right.
we are entertained by death. And then everybody, starts shouting and celebrating the fact that this guy
Accepting it.
is the greatest killer of them all. What is so different from right now? It's no different with the music, like in terms of the context of like we're entertained by the lyrics. But when it comes to a courtroom, it's a very different story. And all of a sudden, something that is entertainment in the outside world. Once you're inside the world of the courtroom, it's like you're entering into a different reality. And that's what we were trying to do in the telling of the film, was that if you take lyrics from a certain context and you put them in the mouth of a judge or a prosecutor or a DA, reading them totally divorced from the music, they're very easily mischaracterized. And then from that, you have the doc explores this from the moment the first Africans set their foot on the shores here in America. You had the war of the state trying to suppress the music and suppress the lyrics, from banning drums after the first major slave rebellion in the 1700s, the Stonewall Rebellion. From that moment of South Carolina saying, it's called the Negro Act. Black people can't have drums. From that moment all the way to today, it's actually a very clear line from genre to genre: Negro spirituals, rhythm and blues, jazz music, rock and roll, soul music to hip hop. It's the same thing that's been happening in every Black genre. So legally, in answer to your question, it's not an old tactic that's been happening. As Killer Mike says in the doc, it's not new what's happening. It's just the latest link in the chain. And there's a massive double standard to be entertained by this thing, but then to incarcerate people for it if it's coming from the hip hop genre.
Yeah, I mean, just mention I put together another podcast. It's called Newsbeat. It's a social justice journalism one, and our second episode was the war on drugs and how that people
Exactly.
I think it goes back to Ronald Reagan or Nixon, and it goes back even further to Harry Anslinger in the 30s, and and attacking jazz singers for the most part.
Totally.
Including Billie Holiday. It's a great it's a great tragedy. So again, not a new story. But the fight continues for artistry to be taken seriously, Kemba. And I'll preface this with this: there are people who say, "Well, listen, and there's a DA right around the corner here who says you gonna commit your crimes on wax. Wax. Listen to me, I'm old. On wax. I'm gonna put you in jail for it." So how do you do the pushback of, listen, sometimes this stuff is actually questionable whether this is artistic value or just or straight narrative, and if it's straight narrative, is it confessional, blah blah blah. As an artist, how do you deal with that, or how do you look at that with other artists, and then how do you deal with it yourself?
I think that's the exact thing that makes it so difficult. Some people are that's happening. Some people are committing crimes and rapping about it. It's very few, but I think those sort of set the example for this to be used, for lyrics to be used. Those are always the sort of scapegoat argument. As an artist, there's like never been a time, especially in Black music, where people weren't writing about their surroundings, writing about the environment, what they were going through, even back to Negro spirituals. That's always been a sort of core foundation of Black music. And so it's not going to stop now. People are struggling right now. Lower class is crazy. And so people are going to write about it. People are going to write about the violence around them. I think bringing lyrics into like a court case, not only is it's not just about combing through the lyrics and seeing if something matches the crime. It's sort of like the intention behind the writing. So if you divorce the context of intention, like, is this just to entertain? Is this is this metaphor? Is this, then it becomes so easy to make it whatever you want to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what's happening the most. It's like, it's like people are writing this stuff, as you said. We have like an appetite for insatiable sort of appetite for violence, and so people are using that to come up, to get out of the hood. Honestly, And so yeah, I don't think it'll ever change. I wouldn't tell artists to stop writing how they write, to stop expressing themselves. I wouldn't tell them to censor themselves. I think
Right.
I think it's sort of our job to get educated on it and to push for these changes in legislature, and there's been some progress in the Rap Act in like California, but we're working to get it sort of. I'm saying we. Well, it's
Well, you're part of it now.
right
You're part
now.
of it. You're part of it now. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, there's hope that it'll that sort of thing will be nationwide, and hopefully even more, and that it'll have some sort of teeth to it, because right now even in California it's sort of done in a way where they can easily find loopholes to still bring lyrics in and still sort of do it. But it's a work in progress, man. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a very sort of nuanced conversation. So it'll take some time.
Yeah. I mean, books are great, but again, visual learners love documentary / dramatization. So this helps add to that fight, I guess, or at least the realization. You might be on the other side of it. You might be on the, if, all the stuff is criminalized and you shouldn't be talking about it, and we're going to prosecute you for it. But then if you don't know these other kind of nuances, as you say, then it gets lost in the sauce. What's interesting is that there's a lot of people who say, keep this stuff off the radio. And my response is, it's there. What you said, Kemba, they're still going to write about it. They're still going to release it to YouTube. Like, you're not going to stop I guess, even if it's embellishment, even if it's, I have to flex because of my surroundings. So I'm going to rap in a way that makes me seem bigger than life.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to happen until you fix the conditions
that
are causing the circumstances that are creating the content.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Even the idea, like, if my surroundings are rough, violent, like, I'm gonna talk like I'm bigger than that, like I'm stronger than that, like I'm the, I'm the one that's in power, in charge. It's gonna happen until we fix the conditions, like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
go ahead, Jay.
just to add to that it's again, it's it was back in rock and roll times, they were saying the same thing. They were saying it was like nigger music, and they were saying keep it off the radio. The main problem with the music back then was that it was bringing white and black people together, people of all colors together. And that when the music wasn't lyrical, with jazz calling it devil's music, that there's always been a pushback to music that causes people who are on opposite sides to relate. And hip hop does that perhaps more than any other genre that has been done. Most of the listening audiences, I think, white, or the buyers. At least it was that way in the 2000s, in the golden age of like gangster rap and hip hop. Like, most of the people who were buying the music, well, just the majority population in the States. And so I think that freaks out parents, that freaks out people on some level, that, hey, my kids are doing this thing that, I think, was it Ice-T who said on the Oprah show, he was like, if they're listening to the music, it means they're interested in what's going on in my neighborhood. And that scares people.
Have that.
Yeah, you can't have
that.
Once you have people who are listening, that means that maybe on some level they're understanding, and if they understand, then they'll try to do something about it. And then you're messing with the power structure that's in place. And there are forces working very hard to preserve those institutions, cultural institutions, and ways of doing things in our culture, as the documentary then goes back and tells the stories about. So yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of this concept that hip hop could, I don't know, save America. Maybe it's just, I don't know, something just in the back of my head. I thought I heard it somewhere. Kemba, let me ask you a question. How, and then explain why. What I mean. How did RDAC plant seeds in your foundation that led you to this place right now?
Man, that's a great question. I think well, RDAC is sort of like the culmination of me learning from Rebel Diaz and just their influence on me.
And just to explain to the folks, RDAC, Rebel Diaz Arts Collective, right? It was called a collective.
Yes.
Right. Up in the Bronx. This was a community-based, arts center.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we used to have workshops and programs. We taught kids how to record, how to write, pro tools, photography, Photoshop, so many things. We had
Yeah.
a radical library. We did we did sort of music film weeks. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I think just knowing Rebel Diaz, meeting them when I was so young, my formative years, 15, 16, and them sort of taking me under their wing, and it just I developed my sort of analysis of life through activism and through sort of political education. I was traveling the world with them, and just seeing different people's struggles and talking to people that I would have never had access to otherwise. Going to Ferguson after Mike Brown was killed, and going to Baltimore uh, after Freddie Gray, and the SOA conferences in Atlanta and Venezuela with them. And it's just I learned so much, and I felt so much of the world, and it that really sort of impacted the way I write and just the way I see everything, just
Yeah.
as a united struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Dope. I just want to give flowers to the,
Ab-
folks that do things in the communities, that people don't think hip hop does, but hip hop does all of these things. You
Absolutely.
know. Yeah, word. So what's, I guess, the feedback been for both of y'all since the thing? Obviously, the film has just dropped on Paramount. It's only been out for a little bit. What's just been like kind of the general feedback, I guess, from the public, from other artists, from folks that y'all might have known, or just from
Mhm.
strangers? What's it feel like now that's
Yeah,
out?
well, it's been kind of amazing. Like even like doing when we were doing the screenings in person at Sundance, people would come up to us afterwards from all different walks of life and at different age groups. People who, like you said, had come to the documentary thinking one thing and then walking out thinking something completely different. People mostly like some of the older audiences who walked in thinking like, yeah, that these like rap artists are rapping about crimes that they've committed and they should be prosecuted for it, and then having
Right.
a complete 180 turn and being like, this is way more complicated than that black and white thing. We've had prosecutors come up to us afterwards. We've had public defenders, several public defenders come up to us afterwards and say, I have this conversation every single week. And I'm so glad for the first time we feel seen and like this is essential. We've had prosecutors who have turned into public defenders who come up and talking to us and saying the same thing. So it's been kind of remarkable that feedback. And the press, yeah, for the most part has been really positive about the film. And that has been great to see as well as the word just starts to spread about it. And during a time in which legislation is starting to happen as well. So it's yeah, from my perspective, it's been pretty great.
Yeah, I agree. I've had people tell me that it's happened to them. Tell me about people that it's happened to that in their hometown. It, um, as I've come to find out, that sort of 700 um, cases that we know about. The co-author Eric Nielsen said we should add a few more zeros to that. And I'm
Mm,
hearing about these people that it's happened to, and that's been sort of an honor that
Mm,
people feel like they can come to me or should come to me and tell me that
mm,
type of stuff. That's been my favorite part of it, honestly.
mm. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
big. That's big. I guess then as we wind down a little bit here, what's the one? It's a little bit of what you just said, but maybe what would be like sort of the one either takeaway that you got from working on the project, or the one thing that you want people to watch it for?
Mhm. I for me, everything in the documentary, whether we're having these rappers in Chicago do Shakespeare to show um, how talking about violence has been something that we've been doing since the 1500s,
Right.
and it's like our most exalted form in the English language of storytelling is about communities that are lower class communities or communities in a poverty class talking about their issues and their concerns, and elevating those to the status of art, and that those are the stories that our cultures held the most dear, and that
Right.
just showing people that today that's the same thing that's happening, but there's a difference there in how we view it, and there shouldn't be. Um, that doing things like that in the doc is in an effort to help people see the artist differently and see the music differently. And that's my hope, because if you can do those two things, then all of a sudden all the issues with the system, it's hard not to care about just how broken the criminal justice system is in this particular case. And to the question, I guess, just finally, of what the people who walk in and say, like, some of these rappers are committing crimes, and then they're talking about them in the music. As Kimba said before, the vast majority, including in cases like Mac Phipps, where he spent 21 years in prison on a 30-year sentence, and which was eventually exonerated, but not after taking all those years of his life, is that the vast majority of the cases are prosecutors taking this lyric from here and this lyric from here and this lyric from another song and copy and pasting them together to create their own narrative around what the music means. And these are the so-called experts in the system. There's just as long as they know they can use the lyrics, they're going to use them any way that they want and can, and they're going to use this, again, 300-400 years of cultural programming inside every juror's brain, that when they hear rap music, they're immediately going to think that the people behind this music are inherently violent, are actually committed to doing the things in lyric, that there's no poetic background or justification for the words. Like, that's what every jury member and judge is sitting down, pre-programmed, knowingly or unknowingly. That's how they are judging the music. So the documentary is meant to just clear that whole palette and to say, just look at it cleanly, look at it with new information, and make your own judgment. So that's my hope for the doc.
Yeah. My hope is that like I said before, if there's 700 known cases, and we should add a couple more zeros to that. I want people to sort of realize and come to the conclusion that, all of these people are not huge artists. These are not all sort of young thugs. The vast majority are people that are not rapping for a living. And so these are people that have jobs and families and are only seen as a rapper when it is time to convict.
Right. I always say, like, you'll see an article, be like, local rapper arrested for such and such. And I'm like, he works at Wendy's, bro. Like, he just put up some YouTube videos. He's not a rap. Like, till you put rapper on your your taxes at the end of the year,
right?
But like you say, when it's time to write the article, they're a rapper.
100%, and that is literally because that is like a proxy. Like it like triggers these prejudices, it triggers biases, and it makes just the case so much stronger. And so, I hope that when people see it, they can sort of spot it now after they watch the film.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think it's noble work. Obviously, it's right up our alley. We are happy to see it come to fruition. Jay, it's a great way to translate that book into something, like I said, visual, that is engaging. I think y'all handled it, really, really, really smartly. Taking it around the world was an added touch. I think that, people don't realize that this isn't just, a United States problem. It's a oppression problem. It's a hierarchy problem. It's a, division problem. You know what I mean? And that extends, throughout not just this industry, as we're talking about, but obviously just throughout the lands. So I thought it was well done. I thought it was important. And I thank you for bringing it to light.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for allowing us to talk about it here. And it's these sorts of conversations that will actually enact the change that we're looking for. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Well, like you mentioned, there are legislative efforts. And of course, there's artists like yourselves in both of your, now together, but in both of your mediums that are helping do this. Anything next that we should know about, or anything that y'all working on together or separate that, might want to share with anyone? I don't know, like making music or anything, making films, I don't know, something like that.
I'll be lucky. I'm sure Kim and I have a long life ahead. And so you'll be the first to know about it when something else is happening, on the movie front at least.
All right. Kemba, you got anything on the, I know you teased something recently. What do you got?
Yeah, I just put out a song called "You're No Evil," and I'm in the swing of putting out music all year, and so yeah, just look out. Hopefully we can talk again about it.
100%, man. You're always welcome here. I often like to take credit for your success, but I mean, It is, as you know, I've told you this. The thing is, I've told you this several times during your careers now. That I'm so glad I met you. When I first did, and to see the progression, kind of knowing what was going to happen, picking it. It was like, this guy's great. To see you, come to fruition and everything that I know that you've gone through personally and professionally, it is a true joy and honor to see this come to life. So.
Thank you, brother, and congratulations, man. I love seeing everything you do at award-winning podcast. Okay, you've been in the trenches like with me forever, like since I was a teen, man. So like you're really about it. I love seeing it.
I appreciate the appreciation, man, and it goes both ways. So yeah, come back and talk to me, both of y'all, anytime y'all got something going on, and we'll be in touch for sure. Next time I come up to New York, we'll hang out.
Let's do it.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Peace.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for